Hey guys, Chris Story here. In this video I'm going to, as a big thank you for helping me reach my goal of 850 subscribers, I'm going to go through my Supercoach team for season 2021. So let's have a look. So to start us off in defence, so Jake Lloyd firstly. So Lloyd is someone where, going back a few weeks, I wasn't even considering him as a selection. I was thinking, he's overpriced, he's a no for me. Braden Campbell's a better kick, Jordan Dawson's a better kick, and I still believe that. I think they should be the ones taking the kickouts. But what seems like is the case is I think Lloyd will be taking the kickouts, but more importantly as well with the new play-on rules and with, I guess, how teams are really trying to get the ball into the hands of, I guess, those ball movers, whether it's their run and carry ball movers, whether they're really good kicks. I think Jake Lloyd is going to be utilised again very heavily this year and really poses a captain option for a few reasons. So you've got that, but also I think there's going to be a big cutback in the numbers of midfielders, particularly those that really play that very contested style of game, a very sort of inside dominant, and that's where they get all their ball. And same with ruckman as well, where I think there'll be fewer ruck contests with a lot fewer stoppages during the preseason, just with how the game is flowing a lot more this year. So that's something to look out for. So given all that, I've got Jake Lloyd, and look, he's a durable player. I know he's had his sort of preseason hiccup, if you want to call it that, but look, he's a 22 game a year guy every year. He's going to be a top 6 defender. So for me, he's a lock and load. He gets my tick of approval there. And then in my D2 spot, so Rory Laird. So for me, pretty straightforward pick. He's playing midfield this year, so with the midfield minutes, high centre bounce attendances, he's going to score well just as he did second half of last year. I think he's pretty solid. Durability, good, proven over time as with a Lloyd, so I think he's a pretty safe pick, honestly. You've got Jordan Ridley, so he's someone I've got exclusively for Supercoach. I don't have him for fantasy, but in Supercoach, I think he's a really good pick. So he took all 7, I believe it was, kickouts for Essendon. So if he's really boosting those kick-out numbers and he's still intercepting, is still doing good things, I think he's going to have a really good Supercoach scoring season for Essendon. So, and particularly with the losses, so you've got Sard, obviously, he's joined Carlton. So with that departure, you've got Connor McKenna as well, going back to Ireland. Both of those guys really generated a lot of rebound and drive from defence. So with Ridley really being that number 1 option and an even more prominent number 1 option this year, I think he could even have some upside for growth. So given that, I like having him in defence. Caleb Daniel, I think with the new man on the mark rules, I think he's going to really take off and see his numbers increase. Just in terms of whether it's as a handball receive target, guys will take marks. You've got all this space where a Daniel can just fly past, get the ball, receive, really do some good things. So I think his numbers have scope to improve as well. And same story with a Jaden Short, where he led the competition in metres gained last year, and again, as that sort of almost number 1 option in defence for Richmond, I think they're really going to be looking to feed him as often as possible. The risk factor there is you've got Basher Hooley, who is going to be returning at some point from injury. So when he comes in, maybe that takes some of the numbers away from Short, so be wary of that. But yeah, look, seeing Short's 1 preseason game, well, obviously that was terrific. So we'll have to wait and see how he scores. But I think really, I guess with the way the rules have gone, I think that's really going to work into Short's favour. So I think he's got some real upside for growth, and that he, is with the other guys here, can be the top 6 defenders. And then later on it would be a case of you'd bring in Whitfield as your, I guess, 6th premium defender. So Jordan Clark I've got in here, so I'm pretty confident with him as long as he's named round 1. He's very, very underpriced, so he'll make you a lot of money if he's listed. And just seeing the way he played against Essendon, just all the run and carry, he's someone you really want to get the ball into the hands of as much as possible. Just did a lot of damage, hit the scoreboard even, took so many kickouts. So yeah, I really like Jordan Clark this year, and yeah, fingers crossed he's named for round 1 is basically the thing. If he's not, my backup plan would be probably Hayden Young, given for me he's probably Fremantle's best option for kickouts. Of course, you didn't have Luke Ryan playing with him on the weekend, which is sort of, I guess, the challenging component there, where there's that level of uncertainty. But he'd be more than adequate as a backup plan. He'll make you money regardless. But of course, I think Jordan Clark will make more money. And Possibly has slightly higher scoring upside, but I think maybe similar. But given the cheaper price point, Jordan Clark's my guy. Bench, I've got Highmore and Kazitsky. So Highmore I'm comfortable picking. Hopefully he's named round 1. It's far from certain, but he's got game. He's a good interceptor, can rebound a little bit. So he'll score fine and be a solid bench option. Could be possible on the field, but just job security I'm a bit worried about there. And then Kazitsky, look, I don't like having him in my team. I know he went off for 6 goals, 3 against North Melbourne, but that's an outlier. He's not doing that again. It's North Melbourne. So yeah, it's just basically he's there at the moment to sort of fill a spot, but I might even get rid of Kazitsky and use that as a captain's loophole. So I might actually cut him completely from my plans, depending on what happens with the Highmore. And I'll have to see as well, are any other rookies listed for round 1 that maybe I'm not expecting at this stage. But to go through the other defence considerations while I'm on the defence. So Hayden Young, as I've mentioned already, he was close to making my defence. If I was to move, say, a Clark into the midfield for DPP possibilities, I'd probably be bringing in Hayden Young. I just like his scoring generation scope as that, I guess, possible kick-out option for Fremantle. I think he should be taking as many as possible, really, given his almost that borderline top 5 kick in the comp. I know he's not recognised as that yet, but I think by season's end he will. Moving on from there, Hunter Clark, I really like in Supercoach, and he's another who, for me, was really unlucky not to make my team. Ultimately, it came down to, is he a top 6 scoring defender? And with the way the game's going and how it looks like a lot of these other rebounding defenders will score, he misses out on that basis. But in any other year with a Hunter Clark, look, it looks like he's going to be playing a lot more through the midfield, high percentage contested, so he really ticks a lot of boxes there for me, but he'd still run off halfback a bit as well, so he's that dual position guy. But look, as a junior, Hunter Clark, he was a prolific midfielder, high volume accumulator, ball winner, had all those elements there. So yeah, I think that's going to be his future, and I think he's going to be a future midfielder and really high scorer. So, and look, he's going to, I think he makes money realistically. I think he's that sort of player where he'll make you money. So it ultimately depends on what you're looking for from your defense. But based on sort of the advice and my conversations with George, so from his Supercoach, his YouTube channel where he talks all Supercoach, my advisement from him was really, you just want your keepers. It's all about getting as many keepers as possible, and I've really strived to have as many as possible. So, look, given that, I think there's a few others that are more those top 6 scoring options. So on that basis, Hunter Clark just misses out. But yeah, not by a lot. Tom Stewart, I like in defence. He'll probably take a number of kickouts again. I think he'll be a high scorer, prominent in defence for Geelong. So he was on that edge. But again, just probably outside of my top 6 scoring defenders if I'm to project for the year, but not by much. So he was a bit unlucky there. Jack Crisp, again, durable but pretty consistent scorer. So provides drive from defence. But again, I think he's just outside those top 6. Another one who I think could show improvement this year, you've got a Will Powell. So yeah, I think he's really set for a breakout year, provides rebound, drive with his run from defence in particular. But he's really learning to come off his man, intercept a bit more. I think we'll see a bit more of that. I really think he's set for a breakout year, but is he Supercoach relevant? For me, no. I think there's others that'll generate more cash, others that are going to score better and be more likely keepers. But if you needed another mid-price option for whatever reason, Jimmy Webster I quite like. Good ball user. He's scored well in the past. I think he's going to make money, but I don't think he's going to make as much as a Clark or a Hayden Young. So for me, he's out of my team based on that. Lockie Jones, if he's named round 1, I'd be pretty tempted to bring him in and have him as a bench option. And I'd be getting rid of Kazitsky most likely there. Very good contested game. Played really well in the Sandful last year. Sandful finals, fantastic. Really boosted his production. Provided a lot more rebound and drive from defence. So here's someone to definitely keep your ears out for when he does debut, whenever that is. But he looks like he's probably on that edge at this stage. So maybe in, maybe out. Hard to say at this point. Ryan Mansell, if there's any injuries in defence for Richmond, I think he probably comes in at some point. So given he's a minimum price guy, keep your eye out for him, but doesn't sound like round 1 will happen. And then Kieran Briggs as well is very interesting. So look, it looks like Flynn's got the number 1 ruck role for GWS pretty well sewn up. But yeah, look, Briggs, if anything happens to Flynn and he misses a few games, well, Briggs is in and he'll score well being a ruck, because rucks score well. And look, he's a pretty solid guy. He gets his hit outs, strong-bodied. He's pretty competitive through there. He's not going to find much around the ground. Probably won't hit the scoreboard much, but look, he'll be competitive. So, and that's really enough for a bench spot ultimately. And then moving on to my midfielders. So I've gone with Zach Merritt, and he was one of many I gave consideration to. But ultimately, in the end, it came down to he's durable, he's proven, consistent over time. I think he's going to have a good year. I think with mids, what I've had to do this year, I've had to really taper my expectation with regards to what their contested possessions, clearance numbers, those sorts of things will be. And I think with Merritt, I guess, more outside than those guys, I don't think his scoring will be as impacted as, let's say, a Lachie Neale or a Patrick Cripps, even though I've got him in my team, or one of those guys who wins a very high volume contested. I think those guys, if anyone's going to get hurt by the new sort of man on the mark rules with the way the game's going to be played with fewer stoppages, I think Merritt's probably one that would be safer in that regard. So given that, I think he'll be a top 8 scoring mid, and I've got him as someone I'm pretty comfortable with starting, where I don't think there's too much of a downside as with a lot of the others. Patrick Cripps, look, he wasn't great in his pre-season showing, but look, St Kilda are hard to score against. So, look, it's just a case of he's an underpriced premium, and he's someone where I think he's still got top 8 scoring potential for a mid. So I could be proven wrong. It's a speculative guess, but just based on his history at least, as long as he's healthy, that'll be the key, then he could be in that mix to be a top 8 scoring mid. So, yeah, I've still got faith, but yeah, it's a wait and see. Might be too risky for some, and if that's the case, fair enough. But I still do like him. And same with a Matt Rowell. So again, he wasn't all that impressive either against Brisbane. But again, look, he's underpriced, but his contested stuff was good. High volume contested. So look, I still do like him for at least Supercoach purposes, not as much fantasy, but in Supercoach I think he'll score well. And he could be, if he had a good season, he could average 110, so that could be possibly even a top 8 scorer this year with what might happen with some of the mids. But yeah, look, I think he's possibly about maybe a 105, so look, that's enough. He'll make you money, and he'll be sort of a fine scorer for a mid. But yeah, if you want someone a bit more expensive, fair enough, but this was sort of the price point I ended up coming with, as with Rowell sort of almost my, I guess you could say, last selection for the purposes of this team. So he just sort of fit in at that price point. So Dom Tyson, look, I think his scoring is going to be pretty good, assuming he's selected round 1, and as long as he's playing through the midfield. Look, there will be selection pressure once you've got really a full group of midfielders there for North Melbourne, but it sounds like his pre-season's been really good. He's feeling good about his body. Everything seems to be aligning. 3 goals in his game. So, look, he played pretty well, and yeah, he's finding the footy, winning the footy. So, in terms of price generation, I think he'll be pretty high. So, yeah, he was really quite appealing and a good field option there, obviously. So, Paddy Dow, look, he's high enough in centre bounce attendances. Look, he's probably that 4th midfielder for Carlton, where obviously Cripps and Walsh are the big 2. Zach Williams will be prominent through there, but he'll also get his minutes forward. So they're the big 3. Paddy Dow, look, he's gotten a lot stronger. He's winning it more contested, it feels like. So I think he'll have a better year, but then he's also got the drive out of the contest, where he's got that acceleration burst out of there. So I think he'll get those midfield minutes, but he'll be splitting time between midfield and sort of half forwards. So I think he'll score well. He'll be good for cash generation, and he'll score enough to be a pretty viable to solid sort of field option. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with a Paddy Dow. Braden Campbell, in his role off halfback, he's a lock for my team, given that. Just with how good his ball use is, yeah, he's going to be really impressive. For me, he's a top 3 quality kick in the competition, so watch for that. But then he's also got the burst sort of out of defence. He's got that burst run, so he can provide the run and carry with the kick as well. So yeah, he's going to be a weapon, and hopefully Sydney utilise him. But yeah, I think he's going to score pretty well, with or without Lloyd. And then Devon Robertson, so it's just a case of, is he named round 1? With Cam Rayner, maybe there's a chance. If not, then probably Eli Smith. So that midfield position, I guess you could say, is potentially going to move around. So that's a bit of a wait and see for me, depending on who's named. But yeah, certainly if he is named, for me is someone to start on the field. He's going to rack it up. Unlucky not to really play more than the one game last year. Tom Powell, look, he's going to score well through the midfield. He's going to find it. So as long as he's named round 1, he's in for me. Errol Goulden, very outside. You could start him on the field if you want. For me, he's more of a bench option, but he'll make you money. So he's solid. Have him. Good one to have. Scott, I think, is going to score pretty well. He plays sort of outside, half forward, half back. Play a little bit inside, but he's not going to get those minutes. But he can win his own ball, but he's a really good sort of runner, good kick, has penetration. So I think he might get some games for the Dogs. So if he's named round 1 at that price point, given he's a 25-year-old ready to go, I think he's a pretty solid get. So, and then Connor Downey, he was the last of my rookie mids. He's someone I didn't want to have to select. He's not going to score much. He won't make a whole lot of money. It is not suited to Supercoach scoring at all. He's very outside stylistically, so do keep those things in mind. But yeah, look, if you're struggling for a midfielder, as I was here, just like if a Valenti is named round 1 or if a Collier Dawkins is named round 1, Downey's out. So he's the first one out, unless, say, a Scott isn't named or someone else isn't named and there's no better option. But that's sort of how I'm looking at that sort of situation there. But for some of my midfield considerations that were, I guess you could say, unlucky, Tom Green, love him. He's going to go up a lot in price. He's going to have a good year. He can become one of the dominant sort of, I guess, contested ball-winning mids and stoppage specialist in the comps. So be aware of his name. If for some reason he's sort of like a last player, he fits into that price bracket in your midfield, look, give him strong consideration. He'll be probably for a lot of the year a centre bounce midfielder and score really well and make you a lot of money. So be aware of him. But I thought the opportunity cost between he and Tyson, I think maybe a Tyson might sort of go up a bit more in price, even if he doesn't quite average as much. So that was behind that decision. Willem Drew, I think he's got great scoring scope for Port Adelaide, and he's someone I would definitely be, if I was coach, utilising through the midfield, where looking at his preseason game, well, I think for contested possessions, tackles, clearances, he was top for Port Adelaide. So, and he's someone where he's just been underutilised for so long. In his draft year, I would have had him top 10 on my draft board. So he's someone I'm really rooting for, and I think he's going to be a real breakout player probably this year, assuming he gets sort of all those midfield minutes that he's capable of and would really thrive in. But an absolute bull of an attacker, where it's just in terms of tackling, just is as hard as almost anyone I've seen. Attack on the ball, same, but really good athlete, skills good. So yeah, I think he's a piece and a potential breakout player. So watch for him. I think he makes money. He could make comparable money to a Tom Green, and he can score well. So yeah, if he fits into that price bracket you want, look, give him consideration. And if he's named round 1 in the midfield, maybe you could almost pick him. But with a Green and a Drew, look, they're probably not going to be your top 8 sort of mids. So again, for me, it came down to I just really wanted cash generation through the mids rather than guys who probably won't quite be keepers for the whole year. And Cripps and Rowell, look, they just sort of fit that keepers category for me, where I feel comfortable sort of setting and forgetting with those guys. So whereas with a Green or a Drew, probably not quite for me, but they'll make money. So be aware of them in that much. Jack McRae, he was a strong consideration. I considered whether it's he or Merritt, either or. I would have been happy with either. I think he'll have a good year. But it's just a case of, look, with the addition of Traw, it's just hard to see him necessarily having the inside minutes he needs to get the scores that he's capable of. So yeah, for me, look, given I think his role is going to be a bit more outside than would be optimal, given that, yeah, I'm giving the points to Merritt just due to that McRae uncertainty. But McRae certainly has the highest ceiling. And yeah, someone if you have in your team, well, he's absolutely a solid get. So, and if I could move a Rowell or a Cripps up to him, I would absolutely do that, because he's going to be a top, easily 6 midfielder, I would have thought. So moving on from there, so Clayton Oliver is another fantastic get. If you've got him, you can absolutely keep him, very viable. With, again, the game, I think, going a bit more outside, a bit more uncontested, less stoppages, I do think Clayton Oliver's scoring will be impacted. He had some preseason issues, if I recall correctly, maybe some surgery. But yeah, given that, look, last season was a much higher scoring season. Maybe that gets pulled back slightly this year as well. So there's a few things where I just think, look, maybe he's a touch overpriced. But look, he's still sort of in that captain sort of possibility territory. So again, very viable for selection. And if you've got him, I'm not going to tell you to take him out because he's pretty solid there. Moving on, Jack Steele. I gave him a good amount of thought, but for me, I've concluded no, he won't be in my team this year. So you've got Brad Crouch introduced to the midfield. Maybe that takes some touches off him. But I also think Hunter Clark is going to be valuable for St Kilda through their midfield. And I think with those two in particular, it's going to take some touches off of Steele, plus less stoppages. I think there's a few factors that might work against Steele. Maybe he gets some attention this year. But yeah, look, Steele, I think he'll still be solid. I think he could still be a top 8 scoring mid. He's still going to play that ball winning role where he'll pretty sort of conducive to good scores. So look, if you've got him, don't be put off by my comments. He's still very much viable, and he should be sort of that top. Certainly, I'd be thinking probably top 8 scoring mid. I think he's a pretty solid choice there. Josh Kelly gave him consideration. Durability is always the thing that sort of worries me with him. So, look, he didn't quite make it on that basis. But I think his scoring, look, on average scores, he'll be top 8. But for total scores, will he be top 8? Is always the question. So, based on that, no for me. But if you've got him, well, look, he could have a good season and could well be the highest scoring mid. So, it's a high risk, high reward call. Lachie Neale, I don't really like Lachie Neale this year. I think he's really heavily overpriced. So given I think his average drops by could be 15 to 20 points per game, and for a few reasons. So he played very heavy minutes last year. I don't think he can sustain that with longer quarters. There's some talk maybe he plays a bit half-back, maybe even a bit half-forward, so it won't all be as exclusively inside midfield minutes, so that would have an impact. But again, with the rule changes, it feels like there'll be less stoppages, so it's just there's too many factors playing against him. And his second half of year production last year really dropped away, and I think really through the midfield he'll get a lot more attention. So with all those factors in play, I just think he's overpriced and someone where you can trade into him later. He'll be a top 8 scoring mid easily. He could be the top 1 scoring mid. So get him at some point, but for me, I'm not starting with him. That's not even a consideration for me at this point. So if you've got him, look, you could still have him, but there is quite a lot of downside risk, and I'm not seeing upside. I don't think he's got any scoring growth in him. There'll be a drop. It's just a case of, well, how much does he drop? But very durable, so in that regard at least, you can sort of pick him with some confidence. Sam Walsh, really like him, gave him strong consideration. He's going to attend more centre bounces this year, so his scoring should go up. So is he going to be one of those top 8 scoring mids? For me, he's on that fringe. He might. Hard to know if he will be. So, yeah, and it, look, he's durable enough, so presents an option. He's got some upside for scoring growth, so he's an interesting one, but yeah, for me, I just preferred a few others. At a similar price point, I'll take Cripps, given he's done it before and is a higher percentage contested guy, which really suits the Supercoach game. And also with Walsh, you've got some ball use issues that still could be cleaned up. So that's some of my thinking there. Jack Sinclair, he's intriguing. Had a really good preseason outing, and just seeing how he looks fantastic. He's been good in years past, but this pre-season he really looks set for a big year. So he's playing midfield minutes for St Kilda, so another reason that Steele's numbers might be impacted. But yeah, he's got the burst of speed, good skills, he can win his own ball, strong tackler. He's got a complete game. So he's one of the few players in the competition that actually have a complete game. And for me, he's one of the more underrated guys. Really good midfielder. He's been great on the outside in the past. I think he'll get some minutes off halfback, generating drive, providing run, using it pretty well. So yeah, I think he's going to score well, but if he was maybe, say, defence eligible, he might be a bit more appealing, whereas being just pure mid, it's harder. But I do like him, and I think he will rise in price and become a really good player this year, if he wasn't already, and I already think he really was good. Luke Davies-Uniacke, I really like him this year. I think this is going to be, like last year was a breakout year, this year I think he's going to go star mode, really. So just the way he's moving this pre-season, he's convinced me that he's going to have a breakout year. So just the burst through stoppages, you've got the evasion, he's breaking tackles, he looks really good. He's got the ball-winning power, he's got the contested side to his game, so he's going to have a good year, he's going to score well. I think he's probably going to attract tags at some point, even ahead of, say, a Simpkins. So that's something to watch for as well. And he's going to make money, but again, look, he's in that awkward price bracket in the midfield where is he going to be a top 8 mid? He could. You can't discount that. But for me, he's outside of that. I think there's probably going to be 15 guys who score better roughly through the midfield. So given that perspective, for me, he's a no. But look, if you have him, look, that's fair enough. I can't blame you for having him because he looks really good this preseason. Moving down the list, so now into rookies. Luke Valenti, I'd love to have him in there. You could almost start him on the field if you wanted, but the problem is, not sure if he's selected round 1. If he is, he's in my team. He's ahead of Downey, he's ahead of Scott, comfortably, possibly even slightly ahead of Goulden. So, yeah, look, I really like Luke Valenti, but yeah, he has to be named round 1, otherwise you can't pick him. Riley Collier-Dawkins, again, another I'd like to see named round 1. I'd pick him ahead of Downey, probably ahead of Scott as well. So yeah, I'd like to pick him, but again, has to be named round 1. So that's a wait and see. But yeah, I'd really like to get rid of Downey if I can and put in a Collier-Dawkins in an ideal world. And then probably the last one through the mids, I'd say, of the rookies that interest me somewhat is a Sam Berry. So I'm not necessarily seeing him being named in round 1. But he's someone where during the year at least he'll be introduced. So, but strong ball winner, has high percentage contested, strong tackler, burst out of the contest. He's someone who's really going to intrigue Adelaide and I think get a good number of opportunities. So, but if he was named round 1, look, again, I'd be happy to get rid of Downey, but I just think probably not quite yet he'll play. But we'll have to wait and see. But again, another name you really need to be aware of. He's going to score well, and when he's playing, he's going to really go up in price. Because he is someone where a year out from the draft, he was at the same stage as a Caleb Sarong. So for a bit of perspective. So of course, missing last year, no opportunity to develop being a Victorian. Well, he won't be nearly as advanced, obviously, this year as a Sarong. But at that sort of same age and stage a year out from the draft, he was pretty similar. So he's a really good footballer, and I think he'll be a good midfielder for Adelaide. So be aware of him. Moving on to my rucks, so Brody Grundy's my R1. He was my first player picked this year as a premium, so I'm very comfortable with that. I would have said any other year he's a touch underpriced, but given there'll be fewer ruck contests, it feels like this year, look, I think he's probably priced around what he'll average, assuming he returns to his sort of 2019 form thereabouts. So yeah, I think he's a pretty solid get. He's a genuine captain option. I've got him currently captain for round 1, given he's facing the Bulldogs, who he scores well against. Stefan Martin will be a lot more challenging than a Tim English, who he destroys every time. But yeah, nonetheless, look, is sort of a captain possibility here and there. So yeah, Grundy's a solid get. He's durable, high scorer, maybe a tiny bit of opportunity for average scoring growth. So yeah, he's a solid R1. Flynn, I like him. He's going to be the GWS number 1 ruck in the absence of Bruce. So yeah, he's a solid get. I feel very comfortable having him on the field. The rookie bench spot, there are a lot of names I considered, but the one that probably has the staying power opportunity, I suppose, is Fullerton. So for Brisbane, he's playing forward, really in the place of McStay. So hopefully he retains his spot there. But yeah, signs are good. So he's from a basketball background, basketball convert. Joined Brisbane a few years ago as a Cat B rookie. But yeah, he's just showing really solid development. In terms of his game, he's got really good hands, really good at ground level for someone of ruck height. But yeah, interestingly, Danaher was used as that number 2 ruck for Brisbane, so ahead of Fullerton, which I found interesting. But I bet I would be using Fullerton personally as that sort of, I guess, number 2, play those relieving minutes behind him, Oscar McInerney. So that would be how I'd use him, but yeah, that's the downside there. But look, there's a lot of other rookie options on the bench as well. So look, I could always flip a Fullerton to the front half, put in one of the other rookie rucks if it looks like they'll get an extended run. But given the others I'm not sure get a super extended run, I liked Fullerton. But moving on to the other rookie options that I gave consideration, or the other ruck options I gave consideration to. So Max Gawn. So you have to consider him given what he averaged last year. But look, for me, durability concerns, number 1. I think there'll be less stoppages this year, so less opportunities to score. But And then you've got, I guess, less minutes that are likely to be playable because last year he was playing very high minutes. I don't think that's sustainable this year realistically with the getting back to normal length quarters. But then you've also got the Luke Jackson factor. So he's going to be demanding more ruck minutes, which is going to be pushing Gawn forward more. So given that, he's not going to average what he did last year, and I think he could be set for maybe a 15 to 20 point drop in average. So given the whole compilation of those factors, look, he hasn't made my starting team. And look, in the opening rounds, he's got an easy fixture. He should score well. So, but look, I don't think he's going to sustain certainly his average from last year. I don't think that's anywhere near achievable. His score last year was really an unachievable outlier score. So, yeah, I'm very happy having the rookie rucks. And there's so many other options even behind them to select that really gives me confidence there. But other names I considered, Riley O'Brien, he's sort of that third scoring ruck. Looking at his preseason game, that was a bit unappealing, honestly, seeing how he went against Port Adelaide and just not scoring at all. I know Port Adelaide are hard to score against through the ruck, but still, I'd be looking for better. But look, he might be a slightly more durable option to go on. Maybe he's better priced, maybe he's got some upside for growth relatively. So I considered him from that side of the equation, but I still think Gawn is going to be that either number 1 or number 2 ruck scorer this year. So given that, look, there's no point having sort of a premium and then having to sideways him to a Gawn. I don't like doing that. It's just a waste of trades. Stefan Martin, I really strongly considered him. Very strongly considered him. Very viable. You could start him for your team. He's the Dogs' number 1 ruck. You've got English behind him. They'll share the minutes though. But yeah, I really like the look of Stefan Martin. But you've got age as a factor, maybe durability given his age. But yeah, he'll go up in price and be another sort of possible stepping stone. But it just depends on how your money works out and all those sorts of factors. So for me, he just missed out, but you can definitely consider him. Sam Draper, again, well priced as well. But yeah, for me, look, I think probably a Stefan Martin would be that better stepping stone option. I think he's got more, I guess, upside for growth in terms of cash generation. But Draper's another way. Look, he's an underpriced ruck, hasn't played a lot of footy, but I think with more games this year, he'll average more. And again, a pretty good sort of opening sort of schedule to the year. Lloyd Meek and Paul Hunter, they're 2 sort of rookie rucks that I gave consideration to. Meek, it probably depends on when Sean Darcy's back from injury. Once he is, I think he'll be pretty solid. So it's sort of, it'll probably push a Lloyd Meek out, where I don't think he can have both Darcy and Meek in the same team. They're both ruckmen, neither really are great forwards. They're both just big bodies who compete through the rucks. So look, Meek will lose his spot. So given that, it's too short term for me. So I can't sort of justify giving him that sort of, I guess, ruck spot. Given Supercoach is more, you've got limited trades compared to, say, an AFL fantasy. So I just don't want to have to move him on that quick. And same with a Paul Hunter. So once a Rowan Marshall's back, once a Paddy Ryder's back, look, even though a Paul Hunter should be playing round 1, I don't see him holding his spot sort of beyond, say, a round 4 or thereabouts. So it's just, look, it's too short of a time horizon, ultimately. But look, you could consider it if you're thinking in that time is going to go up in price and maybe hold his spot for a few more rounds if one or the other for the Saints is slower to come back. But yeah, for me, I'm pretty happy with Fullerton. I think he's going to be more likely to hold his spot of those guys. So I thought that's the safer bet, given Flynn being another sort of rookie priced guys in the team too. And I just want that bench cover just for an element of certainty. And plus, once you've got a Marshall back, well, then you've got the DPP link option as well, where you can always switch a Marshall in if, say, a Flynn misses a game or Grundy misses a game for whatever reason. Not that he really does. He's pretty solid and consistent, and he'll play years 22 every year. So moving on to the forwards. So Danger's my F1, and I think he should really remain that top scoring forward. Maybe it's Dunkley, but I've got them both. So I think they're probably pretty safe bets to be top 6 scoring forwards. Danger, look, he's going to play more midfield minutes this year with the addition of Jeremy Cameron, so that helps him. But again, the game's going to be a little less sort of contested in style, I believe. So with that, look, it sort of does cap Danger's output somewhat. But yeah, Dunkley, look, obviously in his preseason game, as with the whole Bulldogs midfield for that matter, went really well, so that gives you a bit more confidence. And as long as he's playing midfield, he'll score well, but I guess once you've got a Treloar back, look, maybe some of those midfield minutes drop away. But look, I think he's still a pretty solid starting pick. You've got such high upside that any downside is fairly quickly negated and doesn't really matter over the course of the season. So I think he's a pretty safe bet for one of those top 6 scoring forward slots. Dusty, look, he's been a top 6 scoring forward, and he's pretty durable as well. So like, you've got a Danger, a Dusty, they're both durable, so that helps their cases. So look, I'm pretty comfortable selecting him. He's not a must-have, nor is a Danger. So it's just with those two, look, you can start them, you don't have to, but I'm starting them, just I guess wanting the cash generation in other positions. Zach Butters, I think he can be a top 6 scoring forward this year, and he's just shown natural improvement every year. So as I made mention in my AFL fantasy video previously, what he does, so as a junior he was pretty good, but then in his first year in the AFL he took a huge step up, meaningful step up, became a really good footballer right away, and year 2 took another huge step. So I'm just seeing that rate of improvement year on year. I think Butters has got another step in him this year, and look, if he's going to start being introduced even for minor midfield minutes, he's going to play more wing, he'll play a bit higher up the ground, I reckon. So Butters, look, he's got that scoring upside, so with that understood, look, I think he can be that top 6 scorer, or that's how I would justify that. But yeah, an option for consideration for your team, I'd pose him as. But just having known his growth trajectory, look, I like what he could potentially look like this year. I think he could average 100. Jack Zeeble, look, he's there for cash generation. He looked shaky in that role off halfback, couldn't defend to save himself, but he was finding the footies. So look, he'll probably stay in defence and just be forced to learn that role. But then if he's moved forward or put in the midfield, look, he's still going to make you money anyway. So as long as he's not dropped, that's the thing that matters. But I don't think there's any real risk to get dropped. North Melbourne are too young, too inexperienced otherwise. So they really do need him in there just for another solid, capable body, really. Warner, I was really impressed by his pre-season game against GWS. Just winning a high-volume contested, but he's really taken his game to another level this year. So he was already competitive last year, but now he's really finding the footy more. So I actually feel confident having him as a starting field option, honestly. And if he gets sort of centre bounce minutes, well, that's a bonus there, really. So, and that's really going to be what sees him score well if he gets those opportunities. So we'll have to see how often that occurs, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable starting him. The other starter I considered was Bergman, so I could almost have them interchangeable, but because Warner is such a high proportion contested guy, even if he finds a little less of the ball, I think he's going to score slightly better for Supercoach. But with a Bergman, he's going to score well. He looks good off halfback, he intercepts, has a long driving kick, good athlete, can provide some run and carry from defence as well. So I think he can possibly solidify himself as best 22 for Port this year. So if he's in there round 1, he's in my team, and I'd be okay even starting him. But as a first bench option, good option for me. And then you've got a Rowe as well. So he's going to score well, really good crumbing forward. He's not going to play through the midfield or anything, but being a mature ager, being that best state league forward last year, leading the Sandful in the goal kicking, and even the pre-season signs against Port Adelaide, he just looked really good out there. And he just looks really natural, provides a spark that Adelaide don't have in the front half otherwise. So even if his forward pressure's a bit sort of average, you could say, I think he still holds his spot and is good enough to really be a good performer and have an impact there. So the forward considerations that didn't quite make my team, Tom Phillips I really gave strong consideration to, particularly with the inside minutes this year. That's appealing. He's going to make money because last year he was playing half forward, looked lost there. This year on a wing, bit inside as well, looks great. And with the rule changes as well, bit more outside ball, I think Phillips is a beneficiary. So he'll make money, but where it came back for me is he going to be a top 6 scoring forward? And for me, when I went through the names, he was just outside of that. So he might be a top 8, maybe top 9 scoring forward, but is he going to average 100? Not sure. Probably a little bit under for me, but probably not far off. So you can consider him, but he just missed my team, but very close. I think is really someone who's undervalued and really underrated. Collingwood shouldn't have got rid of him. But that's, of course, my opinion. A lot of Collingwood supporters disagree and didn't see a future for him, but I really like him on the wing. I think he's a good piece. Jai Caldwell for Essendon. He's attending a lot of centre bounces firstly, so that's great, but winning a high proportion contested, that's his game. He's a contested ball winner, provides a burst from the stoppages, so that's the sort of game you're looking at there. So he'll have an impact. Production won't be super high, but he's someone who's definitely going to go up in price. But again, is he going to be that top 6 scoring forward? I don't think he'll quite reach that ceiling. Could average 90, so he'll make you money, and if that's enough for you, then cool, get him. But yeah, for me, look, there were some others that are cheaper that I think make more money. Is he a keeper? Probably not for me, so given that, he missed out. But viable for your teams if you have him. He's not a bad pick by any means, but didn't quite make my team. There's a few other forwards for, I guess, for keeper reasons and cash generation reasons I favoured a little more, but can't blame you for having him. Tom Atkins, watching his game for Geelong, I was really drooling at what I was seeing. Just seeing his transformation from that pressure forward, ground ball winner, wins it contested, to seeing him move back. And as a forward, he wasn't hitting the scoreboard. He wasn't much of an accumulator, but put him back and he just looks so solid. He's going to win his one-on-ones. He wins his ground balls, wins a high volume contested. That's great for Supercoach. But then he's generating drive too. So a bit of run, pretty good kicks. So yeah, I think he's a really good piece for Geelong, and I think he can, by the end of the year, actually become one of Geelong's best defenders. He just looked that good to me. So even off one game, he's pretty well convinced me of that. So yeah, as long as he stays in defence, I think he can be really good, and I think he's going to score pretty well. So for cash generation, look, I think maybe some of the guys at, again, slightly cheaper price points outdo him, but he was very close. I gave Atkins strong consideration for Supercoach in particular, given the contested side of his game. I think there's some cash generation chances there. But yeah, for me, just wasn't quite the right price point. I would have liked a bit cheaper if I was to select him. So personal preference there, but I wouldn't deter you from picking him if you have him. And I'd say if you haven't considered him, I'd say be aware of him is another name to think about. Jarman Impey. So he's really good off halfback, and it looks like that'll be his role. So and again, with the rule changes, I think that really suits him to a T. So really a running defender, that's how he generates his drives. So Hawthorn are going to try to put the ball in his hands, not all the time, but at least enough where I think his scoring will boost. And his numbers were really down being sort of a forward. So that's why you're getting him in sort of so cheap. So, but in terms of cash generation, I think he'll be solid. But again, there's probably a few that generate a tiny bit more cash. Not by a lot, but a tiny bit. So again, I slightly preferred others. But again, if you want another cheap forward around his price point, I think he's a good get. So Jordan De Goey. So I gave him consideration. Look, I think he's going to have a good year. Playing particularly early on, he'll play very heavy midfield minutes. I think he's going to score pretty well out of the blocks. So because you've got Sidebottom hurt, Adams hurt, obviously Treloar's gone. So the midfield minutes are there, and he should take advantage of that. But is he going to be a top 6 scorer? Some durability issues, that puts me off somewhat. And on average scoring, look, could be just below the 100 mark, but he could also be above that. So I just like the greater certainty of some more durable options forward. But personal preference thing for me, if you've got him, well, I'm not going to put you off him because he's going to score pretty well this year, I think. So particularly having transformed from, I guess, that close to goal option, didn't get much midfield opportunity, to this year he's more that midfielder first who also goes forward, and he might play a bit of a dusty-ish role where he might start at a stoppage and then maybe he pushes forward from there. So should be a pretty sort of friendly scoring role, I would have thought. But moving on from there, so Isaac Heaney. So again, underpriced. He's been a top 6 scorer before, but I'm not sure he makes it back to that this year. I'm not sure he'll get enough midfield minutes. If he was playing more midfield, maybe I'd be a bit more keen. But look, with injury concerns, with midfield minute concerns, I'm just not sure about him. So he's not in this year for me. Jack Higgins, look, he's going to increase on his price. Obviously, with sort of his brain injuries and what have you, look, he's obviously been out. But yeah, look, this year I think he's going to establish himself for St Kilda as a really good piece. He won't be a centre bounce guy, but he'll play half forward, maybe a bit wing, maybe tiny bit forward pocket, but more your half forward. So he'll find it, he'll rack it up, he'll go up in price, but he's not a top 6 scoring forward forward, I don't believe. So a no for me. Will Brodie, I really like him as a footballer, underutilised by Gold Coast for a lot of years, but it looks like he's really got himself fit and maybe in the frame for selection. But minor job security issues sort of what mostly hold me off there. But he could have a good scoring season. If he plays 22 games and is playing through the midfield predominantly, I think he averages pretty well. But if you put him forward, he probably won't average as much. So just a bit risky there for me. But I think he'll have a good season and he'll make money. So be aware of him in that much. Nick Hind, look, his drive from defence was really good. So off halfback, that's his spot. And with, again, the rule changes, you really want those speedy halfbacks. They're going to do the damage. So Hind will make you money if you pick him. But yeah, well, for me, again, there's a few other options in his price point that will generate more cash. So for me, I decided against it, but I wouldn't blame you if you pick him. So Joe Danaher, again, around that price point, I think probably Azeeble makes more money. There might be a few others that make a bit more money too. I don't think Danaher necessarily will be that super high scorer, but to his credit, he looks fit. He looks like he's going to have a really good season, but his scoring will be a bit temperamental. He'll have some high scoring games, some others that won't be as high. So we'll have to wait and see there, but I think he'll have a good season and he'll definitely make you money in any case. So if you've got him, look, he's a solid get. Don't blame me for having him, but again, for me, I think around his price point, there's a few better options, and a few of those that I've mentioned already, I think around that price point might go up a bit more in price, but a wait and see. Michael Frederick, I really liked the look of him for Freo. He's taken this next step up in his game, so looked really good on a wing, and he was even pushing forward and hitting the scoreboards. So really like him. Again, with the man on the mark rules, he's a guy who can take on the game. He'll be someone who benefits from that. So yeah, he's someone who should go up in price. So be aware of him, but he's more for me a fantasy guy more than Supercoach, given he's more of an outside receiver. So yeah, for fantasy, we'll give him greater consideration, but for Supercoach, he's still very well priced. And if he's playing really a wing role, then there is still some appeal factor. But just again, I think there's a few other cheaper forwards that might not necessarily score more, but I think they'll go up a bit more in price. So that's why I've elected not to go with him. Finlay McRae, he'd be in the forwards if he was going to be named round 1. I'd pick him pretty solidly and with conviction, but I just don't quite think he plays round 1. I think he gets introduced at some point during the season though, so when he is, bring him in. Eli Smith, look, if he might play ahead of, say, a Robertson. If so, he's in my team. Again, if I could replace Downey, I'd love to, with Smith if his name. So yeah, he's someone I'm very open to picking, given he's got those few years behind him, a few pre-seasons. Yeah, I think he'd be a pretty solid get. He was I think he was about a pick 21 or so a few years back. So yeah, I think he's pretty ready. All the pre-season signs suggest he's ready to break out. So I think he should score pretty solidly. Versus Downey, who, look, I don't think for Supercoach purposes he'll score much. And probably the last forward I gave consideration to, so Alec Waterman. So is he going to be named round 1? Not sure. He's sort of on that edge, that fringe. Maybe he's in, maybe he's out. Have to wait and see. But if he is, look, great cheap option. But for me, slightly behind these forwards that I've got in, where just being more of a forward, I think some of these other guys might generate a bit more cash, find a bit more of it. Could be an alternative to Rowe maybe. And look, he does actually have some midfield scope. So he's got the strong body. He could actually go through the midfield and spend some minutes through there. So Essendon do have that opportunity potentially with a Waterman, but it seems like they're more looking at him as a forward. So based on that, seeing him more as a forward from what it appears Essendon's plans seem to be, he's just outside of this front half for me. But again, if he was a bench option, I could move a Bergman onto the field, have a Waterman there, and I could take out, say, maybe a Dusty. Maybe there's ways to work that. Maybe I bring in another premium somewhere else. So, like, there's some flexibility with this sort of team. So, yeah, hopefully some of that helps you with the creation of your teams this year, and feel free to take any of my ideas and some of my thoughts, and hopefully it helps you guys with your teams this year. Thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for future updates. And in my previous videos, so I'll leave this in the description below, but I've done a sort of, I guess, a rookie preview, you could say. So everyone priced Jamara price or under. So make sure you check that video out if you're not sure of the rookies. And it really outlines, I guess, all those rookie options that you should be really looking at during the year. So, and that includes a lot of guys I didn't get to cover in this video, just for time constraint reasons. And I've also, my previous video was going through my AFL fantasy teams, so if you play AFL fantasy, make sure you check that out as well. So, and also on ESPN during the weeks, I did a pre-season review, so I was watching all 8 games over that sort of extended weekend, I guess you could call it. All 9 games, I should say. So I watched all 9. And yes, I went through for each team their best first-year player, a breakout player, and sort of a rebound season. So they might be coming back from injury or off-field issue or whatever the case may be. So that's a worthwhile one to check out as well as a fantasy fan. So just to give a bit more insight and a few different things that, again, I may not quite have covered off in the video. So yeah, just go on to espn.com.au/AFL for that. And I should also mention before I conclude this video, this is, I guess, a favour for the fantasy community more broadly. I'm thinking about doing a sort of weekly footy tips video, but within that sort of, I guess, for the fantasy community, what I'd be doing is going through some of, I guess, the viable rookies to select. So some of the young players who are really coming through that most fans out there would be sort of thinking, well, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Who's this guy? So for some of those new players, or maybe guys who have just played 2 or 3 games and most fans won't know about, I might go through some of the teams selected as well, and yeah, maybe cover off on some of those players, where it's sort of almost like a bit of a dual footy tips selection sort of thing, just as a bit of fun, and then plus a bit of that, I guess, to help the fantasy community, given my value to the community is really based on my rookie knowledge, which is something that really most others won't have, given they're so focused on fantasy, but like watching the AFL play rather than watching the juniors or state leagues or what have you. So given I'm sort of over those spaces, knowing their junior careers, knowing what they're doing in the state leagues, yeah, that's something that hopefully I can add value. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments section below. And if so, then yeah, if I've got the time during the year, I'll try to do that. So anyway, thanks guys, and see you in the next video.